Nothing in your life happens by mere chance. Every event, whether loud or quiet, joyful or filled with adversity, is a precise piece of a greater plan beyond what the mind can comprehend. The fact that you're reading these words right now is not the result of fate drifting aimlessly. It is a wake-up call, a silent bell echoing from the deepest layers of your soul, reminding you of something you once knew, once felt, but may have forgotten. There are moments in life when everything seems to rearrange itself, not through logic, but through intuition. Messages arrive just when you're not searching. Words, books, or even a stranger's voice suddenly carry an unusual depth. That is not coincidence. That is the universe extending an invitation. And when your soul is ready, it will recognize that signal, even if it cannot explain why. Beneath every pain, every disappointment, every unmet longing is a quiet undercurrent pulling you toward awakening. Each challenge does not come to punish you, but to bring you back to your true essence. And the first illusion that must be dismantled is the belief that you are a small being tossed about in a chaotic world. The deeper truth is you are not merely a human seeking God. You are God temporarily living as a human. Most of the suffering you've endured did not come from outside circumstances, but from forgetting who you are. You were programmed to believe you must fight, struggle, prove, and survive. You were taught that you lack, that you're wrong, that you need approval from the outside. But no one ever told you that within you already exists everything: wisdom, light, strength, and unconditional love from the divine source that created you. No one was born to live in eternal darkness. No one was made just to exist in scarcity, fear, or guilt. We were all born with a sacred flame in our hearts, the fire of consciousness, of belief, of boundless creative potential. But for that flame to reignite, you must stop. Stop chasing the world. Stop making excuses for dreams that have closed. Stop calling exhaustion your destiny. And begin to ask the real question: who am I beyond what I've grown used to thinking about myself? If you feel these words stirring something inside, a sensation that is familiar yet foreign, whispering yet urgent, then know that this is not from me, but from the wise part within you, the part you haven't listened to in a long time, the part that's always silent but never absent, the part God placed inside you before there was a name, an age, or a social role. All religions, all mystical paths, all spiritual awakenings ultimately lead to the same place: the realization that you are not abandoned, not cut off, not required to become something new. You only need to remember who you are, a sacred soul on a journey back to the source of your light. Every hardship you've endured didn't break you, but carved into you a depth others can't see. Every dream that was crushed was not an ending, but a test. Do you still believe in yourself, in goodness, in the God within you, or not? Guidance doesn't arrive with thunder or strange dreams. It comes through small choices. Do you stay or let go? Do you remain silent or forgive? Do you choose fear or trust? And in each of those choices, you're either returning to your soul or drifting away from it. No one controls you but yourself. No angel is coming to do your part for you. But when you begin to choose rightly, the entire universe leans in your favor. That is not mysticism. It is the sacred order already embedded in every particle of light. Don't believe anyone who tells you that you must follow a doctrine, a system, or a ritual to be redeemed. You don't need to walk through any gate except the door within yourself. Religion cannot replace experience. Dogma cannot replace presence. Ritual cannot replace awareness. You don't need titles, certificates, or permission. The only thing you need is sincerity, a desire so undeniable to live in truth with the light inside you. And if you've touched that desire, then you've already begun. You may call this spirituality, awakening, inner rebirth, or simply coming home to yourself. It doesn't matter. Words don't define truth. Experience is the mark that cannot be erased. And when you live with an open heart, with the real yearning to know truth, not the truth others impose, but the truth that can be lived, breathed, and loved, Then your soul will be guided in a way that is deeply personal, quiet, yet unmistakable. The universe doesn't call your name through noise. It calls you through silence, through strange synchronicities, through emotions rising without explanation, through a paragraph you're reading today, through a moment you sit alone and tears fall for no reason. That is your soul remembering itself. And from here, there's no turning back. There is only one path. Move toward the light with all the courage, honesty, and deep faith that you are never alone. No one is coming to save you, because you don't need to be saved. You only need to awaken, and everything else, light, freedom, love, and divine guidance, will follow as naturally as breath. The greatest danger is not what others do to you. It's the silent belief that you are merely a receiver of fate. The moment you believe your life is controlled by circumstances, that your pain comes from someone else, that misfortune is an unavoidable shadow, you've already severed the connection to the deepest power within yourself. No one can make you a victim unless you agree to wear that role as your identity. And from that moment, fear, helplessness, resentment, and limiting beliefs begin to root themselves into the structure of your mind. You weren't born to live as a reaction to the world. You were born to create, to initiate, to take ownership of your experience. But that can only happen when you stop blaming, stop seeing yourself as a passive result of what happens around you. Stop allowing your personal history, your family, your past, your traumas, your failures to define your current identity. Your soul carries none of those labels. It does not recognize the word victim. There's a subtle mistake many people make. They identify themselves with their wounds. They confuse what has happened in life with who they are. A breakup becomes proof that they're unworthy. A critical remark from the past becomes the voice that echoes every time they try to rise. An old mistake becomes the compass for every new decision. And so they live in a reality shaped not by life itself, but by outdated recordings. No soul was born to be imprisoned by the sentence of the past. Every suffering can become a launch pad if you're brave enough to see it as a lesson instead of a scar. The universe does not punish you. Life is not against you. The events that unfold are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to illuminate something you have not yet recognized. You are not a body, not a history, not a label. You are a soul, and the soul cannot be harmed. You can lose a loved one, lose money, lose a job, even lose your direction. But you cannot lose your true essence. It doesn't shift with circumstances. It is not eroded by time. It doesn't shrink when you fail, nor does it boast when you win. That essence, the wordless presence you can only feel in the stillest moments, is the only solid foundation you can stand on to begin again, no matter how many times you've fallen. Look around the world. How many people live in healthy bodies but with hollow souls? How many have status, wealth, recognition, yet still tremble in the face of rejection or criticism? How many do everything just to be loved, but never dare to love themselves? That is not freedom. It is the cost of forgetting the soul's nature. Because once you awaken, you no longer need outside validation. You know where you come from, where you're going, and nothing external can shake that knowing. You cannot hold the role of the victim and step into the light at the same time. These two states cannot coexist. One is a subtle imprisonment, the other is radiant freedom. You must choose. And when you choose to live as a conscious soul, you no longer fear life's upheavals, because you understand every upheaval is a mirror. Every challenge is an invitation. Every wound is a doorway into healing. If you look through spiritual eyes instead of the ego, your soul doesn't need salvation because it was never lost. The only thing that needs to be freed is a mistaken perception, the persistent illusion that you are a fragmented, lonely, and powerless piece. When the truth is, you were born from light, and you carry within you the ability to rise from any circumstance, because light does not need to be protected. It only needs to be revealed. Awakening doesn't come through knowledge, but through courage. Courage to face yourself without judgment. Courage to let go of the victim role, even if it's familiar and comfortable. Courage to declare, I am not my circumstances. I am the one who chooses my response to them. And in that declaration, you are no longer weak. You become a creator, not because you control everything, but because you have mastery over yourself. Imagine this. If you were taught from childhood that you are a soul temporarily living in a body, that every hardship is only a temporary cloak of spiritual evolution, that no one can make you feel small unless you consent, how different would your life be? Thankfully, though the past cannot be changed, the present awareness always can. And from the moment you choose to live as an awakened soul, you begin rewriting the entire next chapter of your life. No one is forcing you to live in fear. No one can make you carry your wounds as an identity. No one holds the key but you. You are being called to remember, not through words, but through the living feeling in your daily choices, choosing forgiveness instead of blame, choosing trust instead of control, choosing to move forward instead of freezing in regret. Every time you choose like that, you're not just living, you're raising the frequency of your soul. You are not a person trying to find the light. You are the light, learning to shine through the dense layers of memory, pain, and forgetting. And when that light becomes strong enough, it not only guides your own way, it illuminates the path for other souls who are unconsciously lost. This world does not need more victims. The world is waiting for you to live in your true power. As someone who remembers who they are and no longer trades that truth for sympathy. You don't need to shout to be seen. When you stand in true light, that light makes the whole room fall silent. Not every door opens with force, and not every prayer needs to be spoken aloud. There are journeys that only begin when you are silent enough to hear what is truly stirring inside. Liberating the soul is not some grand destination or distant metaphysical state. It is a return, simple, clear, and no longer postponable. But to walk that path, there are 4 things you cannot do without. Not advanced knowledge, not titles or elaborate rituals, but 4 seemingly simple things that form the irreplaceable foundation of any true awakening. The first is a sincere longing to awaken. There is no path for the indifferent. No one can force you to return to your soul if you are still too enamored with the layers the world has placed upon you. What you need is not a half-hearted wish, but wholehearted sincerity, the kind of inner pull so strong that you cannot go back to living the old way, not even for a day. There's no need to explain or prove anything, just a whisper from deep within. I want to know the truth. I'm ready to live authentically. And when that desire becomes strong enough, the universe will respond. But desire alone is not enough. The second step is the courage to let go of old patterns. You cannot walk into freedom while clinging to rusty chains, even if they're familiar. The mind tends to hold on to what feels safe, even when it hurts. Old beliefs like, I'm not worthy, the world is cruel, I must sacrifice to be loved, these are all subtle barriers rooted not in circumstances, but in consciousness. And no miracle will unfold if you're not willing to dismantle them, layer by layer. Letting go doesn't happen in a day, but it always begins with a decision to no longer live even one more day with thoughts that betray your inner light. Next, the third element, faith in a deep goodness that awaits you. Not the blind faith preached by others, but a deep inner sense that you were not created to fail. You are not the result of a cosmic error. No one is meant to live merely in fear and helplessness. Beneath every pain, there is meaning. After every long night, there is a dawn. But you won't see that light if there is no flicker of belief left in you that things can be better. Faith is the small flame lit in the hearts of the brave, not because they are certain of success, but because they refuse to let darkness define them. And finally, the fourth, daily consistent practice. The soul is not awakened through fleeting emotions, but through steady action. You don't need to become entirely new. You simply need to practice what is truly right, even in silence. Each day, choose a higher thought. With every reaction, pause to breathe. In every moment of pain, instead of resisting, look within. No step is too small if you are heading in the right direction. The universe doesn't measure you by speed, but by the depth you dare to touch. Desire, release, faith, and practice. 4 elements that may seem separate but are in fact one continuous current. You long for truth. Let go of what's false. Hold on to faith and act daily to nourish your true self. None of these are optional. If any one piece is missing, the journey becomes a loop, seeking without ever finding, starting without ever arriving. And if you're thinking, I'm not strong enough, I've failed too many times, I don't know where to begin, then that is the perfect place to begin. Because you don't need to be perfect to start. You only need to be honest. You don't have to be skilled. You only need to be willing to relearn how to live without betraying your soul. The first steps may be wobbly, but if guided by pure longing, each step becomes sacred. No one can walk this path for you. No one can do your part, but you are not alone. Every time you choose light, the light chooses you back. Every time you forgive, you free yourself. Every time you believe in goodness, an invisible door opens. And every time you live authentically, even when no one sees, the universe bears witness. Because the sacred does not need proof. It only needs presence. This journey doesn't need grand declarations. It begins with simple things. An honest whisper to yourself. A small choice that breaks an old habit. A moment of stillness to hear what you usually avoid. These are the things that, over time, bring about the greatest transformation. You don't need to rush, but you also shouldn't delay. Life does not wait for the hesitant. And your soul, the part that already knows what light is yearning to live as it truly is, unguarded, authentic, no longer a victim. The journey won't be easy, but it is the only one worth taking. And you've already begun. All that remains is to keep walking with your whole heart. It is not circumstances that determine your life, but how you think about those circumstances. Every experience in life, whether beautiful or brutal, originates from an invisible source, the stream of thoughts you've long nurtured in your consciousness. The world doesn't happen first and then make you feel. On the contrary, it is your mental state that shapes the way the world appears. So if you truly want to change your life, begin from the only place that holds real power, your own mind. Not everything that happens creates emotion. It's the thoughts you assign to events that generate feelings. 2 people can walk into the same situation, but one sees opportunity, while the other sees only threat. Not because the circumstances differ, but because their thinking differs. When you understand this, you stop trying to control everything outside and begin transforming what matters most. The content constantly running through your mind every day. A person can live amid adversity yet remain at peace. Another may have everything and still feel anxious, angry, or unsettled. The difference is not in their external conditions, but in the quality of their thoughts. Thoughts are the roots, emotions are the fruit, behavior is the branches, and the results of your life are the garden you cultivate daily from what you allow to repeat in your mind. The world is merely a mirror. If you want to change the reflection, you must first change what's being reflected. What's noteworthy is that most of your thoughts aren't ones you consciously choose. They come from your environment, from memories, from your family, from media, from the unconscious repetition of the past. And if you don't pay attention, these thoughts will run on autopilot, like an underground control system, shaping your behavior, your choices, your beliefs, and even your emotions without you ever realizing it. The problem isn't that you think too much, but that you think without being aware of what you're thinking. The question is not where am I, but what have I been thinking to lead myself here? You are not a victim of the current. You are the one creating your own stream through your habitual thoughts. If you constantly think of lack, you'll live in anxiety. If you repeatedly think of betrayal, you'll trust no one. If you believe you're not enough, you'll search everywhere for evidence to prove it. Not because the world is harsh, but because your mind is running on a pre-programmed track. The good news is you can change that. but not by denying negative emotions or repeating hollow positive affirmations. True mindset change begins with honest observation, looking at your thoughts with clarity, without judgment, asking plainly, is this thought serving me or harming me? And if you realize it's making you shrink, making you retreat, then it's time to replace it, not with flowery words, but with a higher truth. The higher truth is you are not limited by your past. You are not boxed in by your mistakes. You are not what others have said about you. You are not events, circumstances, or wounds. You are a being capable of regenerating yourself in every moment through the thoughts you choose. And when you change the level of thought, you change the level of reality. Thoughts are the signals you emit. The universe, by its nature, responds to those signals with matching circumstances, people, and opportunities. You don't need to shout for help. You only need to hold a clear thought long enough, and the world will shift to match that frequency. This is not mysticism. This is the precision of spiritual law. You are what you think in your heart, and this law has no exceptions. However, this doesn't mean you should live in a forced state of being positive. You don't need to deny fear. You don't need to pretend you're not hurt. What's needed is to choose thoughts that are honest yet uplifting, not the ones that pull you further down. When you feel lost, don't deny it. Gently remind yourself, I'm learning to trust again. When you're anxious, don't fake being fine. Choose to think, I'm opening myself to what I don't yet understand, but I'll keep going. That is real change, not a performance. Practicing right thinking doesn't come from a few efforts. It is a process, little by little each day, one choice at a time. Like a patient gardener, you pull weeds bit by bit, thoughts of blame, self-pity, resentment, self-condemnation, and you plant new seeds, trust, compassion, acceptance, and healthy expectation. No seed grows overnight, but what you tend to with consistency will bear fruit in time. If you're wondering why your life hasn't transformed despite your efforts, look inward and ask, have you truly changed the way you think? Or are you still living the same thought patterns, only in different circumstances? The answer always lies within. And the good news is, you can begin again, right from this moment, with a single thought powerful enough to take you far. I can choose again. The mind is the starting point of everything you wish to build, and you are the one writing the script within it. No one can think for you. No one is responsible for the life you create through the silent thoughts you carry every day, but no one can take away that freedom from you either. You can always renew your entire life just by changing the thinking you choose to keep. It is not by accident that you react the way you do, nor is it coincidence that negative thoughts arise precisely when you're ready to move forward. These are the results of neural pathways, mental grooves, reinforced over years of repetition. Thoughts are like muscles. Repeat a movement often enough and it becomes reflex. Most of us live by outdated reflexes, formed during years of confusion, shaped by past fears, by experiences we never revisited with clarity. If you want to master your life, you must start by mastering the stream of thoughts running through your mind each day. The brain doesn't care whether what you think is right or wrong, good or bad. It simply repeats what you feed it consistently. If you keep thinking you're not good enough, that others are better, that you are unworthy, the brain will adopt those as operating truths. From there, it will choose, act, and react based on that program without needing your consent. Again, the issue is this: if you don't examine it, you'll continue living under the influence of a belief system you never consciously designed. Rewiring the mindset isn't about changing everything overnight. It's a subtle and intentional restructuring process. It requires the patience of a long-distance traveler, but it yields the kind of sustainable transformation that comes from a foundation built within. You have thousands of thoughts each day, but if you take charge of even a small portion, the conscious, aware, intentional ones, You've already begun to restore order to the machinery that's been running on autopilot. Where to begin? With a simple act, observe your thoughts as an outsider. Don't rush to judge or label them. Just pause a few times a day and ask, what am I thinking? Where did this thought come from? Where is it taking me? Do this often enough and you'll be amazed to realize most of the time you're not truly thinking, you're simply replaying an old tape. And then you'll start to notice clear patterns. Every time you're about to step outside your comfort zone, you hear, I'm not ready. Whenever someone compliments you, a small voice says, they're just being polite. When opportunity appears, the familiar thought returns, what if I fail? These aren't truths. They're merely sets of neural codes you once accepted as true, and if you accepted them once, you can also dismantle and reprogram them through new choices. Changing your mindset isn't about suppressing negative thoughts, but about replacing them with something stronger, more accurate, and more supportive. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm not worthy, don't deny it. Breathe deeply and say, I used to think that, but today I'm learning to see myself through a new truth. When you encounter inner criticism, ask, is this harshness helping me grow or just making me afraid? You don't need to force yourself to be positive. You only need the courage to be honest, but not stop there. One simple yet powerful technique is to place a gatekeeper at the entrance of your mind. For any thought that arises, just ask, does this nourish me? Does it make me stronger or weaker? If the answer is no, you have the right not to keep it. You don't have to accept everything your mind throws at you. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of thought, and you have the power to choose again. After learning to observe and choose, the next step is to repeat a new thought pattern strong enough to replace the old one. Don't just recite affirmations like a machine. Choose a few that truly reach into your deeper self and repeat them with full emotion. For example, I am not defined by the past. I am building a better version of myself. I'm not perfect, but I am enough to begin. When you speak these, while walking, washing dishes, working, or before sleep, you are engraving a new belief structure into your brain. Neuroscience calls this phenomenon neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change. Every repeated thought creates new neural connections, and when those are strengthened over time, they become the new default pathways. In other words, you can rewire your brain just by cultivating new thinking habits, as long as you do it long enough, consistently enough, and with deep emotion. Don't expect immediate results. Don't panic when old thoughts still rise. The goal isn't to be 100% positive every moment, but to be aware of what you're thinking and choose something more aligned with the journey you're on. There will be days you succeed. There will be days you forget. But if you keep returning to observe, refine, and repeat, you are winning bit by bit. When you rewire your mindset, it's not just emotions that change. Your eyes see differently, your ears hear differently, you respond differently to things that once made you cry, rage, or collapse. Not because the world has softened, but because you have grown in awareness. And that is a power no one can ever take from you. It's not thought alone that shapes destiny, nor fleeting emotion that determines outcomes. But when a thought is clear enough and it merges with an emotion strong enough, you activate a creative frequency few truly know how to harness. This is the leverage that most genuinely successful people have mastered. They don't just think about what they want, they feel it coming alive within. And that very internal state becomes the signal that attracts, the action that leads, and the result that defines the future they live. Thought is direction. It helps you determine where you want to go, what you want to do, who you want to become. But thought holds no power without emotional energy. You can write down goals, build detailed plans, but if you don't feel the longing, the urgency, the excitement, or the gratitude, you've handed a map to a driver with no engine. Conversely, raw emotion without guiding thought is a double-edged sword. It may push you forward without reason or leave you drifting in uncontrolled impulses. Only when you combine the two do you step into the highest state of intentional creation. When you think about what you desire, let your mind become as clear as if you're seeing it happen right before your eyes. Visualize every detail, the sounds, the light, the space, the sensations. But don't stop there. Feel it. If it were already real, how would you feel? Warmth, peace, strength, freedom. Let those exact emotions fill your chest, pump through your heart, and lift you into a higher state of vibration than usual. This isn't fantasy. This is the skill of syncing mind and heart to create a new reality. The universe doesn't respond to words. It responds to the emotional frequency paired with your thoughts. A person may think they want wealth, but if they still carry a sense of lack, they emit the frequency of poverty. Another may say they crave love, but within they still harbor doubt and fear. And that vibration is precisely what life echoes back. You don't attract what you say you want. You attract what you emotionally and mentally align with. And when these two forces converge powerfully, you don't just attract a matching circumstance, you begin to become what you've imagined. This is why so many read self-help books and listen to hundreds of motivational talks but never change. They keep the thoughts in their head but never allow them to touch deeper emotions. They bullet-kill goals and repeat affirmations, but their hearts remain cold, skeptical, or numb. And that's not enough, because you only create when your thoughts and emotions strike the same chord. That's when every cell in your body joins in the vision you're moving toward, and your actions stop being forced, they become instinctive. Creative power doesn't come from trying to be elevated, but from being whole in each present moment. When you think of what you want, let yourself live as if it already exists, not to deceive yourself, but to send the strongest signal possible. You want to live freely? Then practice feeling lightness, decisiveness, and clarity in your daily choices. You want peace? Let your actions, words, and attitude be soaked in slowness and presence. When you feel what you think and think what you long to feel, you've stepped into the sacred realm of transformation. It's vital to emphasize this is not about manipulating reality through toxic positivity. No one is asking you to deny negative emotions. Instead, understand that negative emotions are simply indicators that the thinking you're using isn't serving you. When you feel jealousy, don't scold yourself. Ask, where do I believe I'm lacking? When you feel discouraged, ask, what feeling have I forgotten in the goal I'm chasing? These questions reconnect you. And that reconnection is what matters most. Relinking thought and emotion to revive the creative current. You don't need a perfect life to begin. You only need a single moment of alignment between what you want and what you feel, and that moment, if strong enough, is all it takes to make you rise, move forward, start again. Every time you think with intention and pour genuine emotion into it, you're planting a seed for the future. And if you continue to nurture those seeds with aligned action, results are just a matter of time. Like light bouncing off water, reflecting matching images, life reflects what you emit in harmony from mind and heart. Remember, you are not just the one who thinks. You are the one who energizes those thoughts. And that energy is the language the universe hears most clearly. There is a flame that never goes out, even when you're tired, lost, or in despair. It does not come from outside, does not depend on anyone's validation, and is untouched by time. It is the flame that every religion, every civilization has called by different names. But deep within you, your soul already knows. It is the inner Christ. Not a figure on a sacred wall, not a borrowed belief, but a living presence flowing silently within you, holy, unblemished, and eternal. When you begin the path of awakening, you're not learning something new. You are simply peeling away layers of forgetting, false beliefs, and imposed limitations, until you reconnect with the flame you've carried since you were created. Christ is not outside you. He is not a figure to kneel before in separation. He is the highest frequency of unconditional love. the untouched purity within you, the deep wisdom that knows all fear is illusion. When you are silent long enough, he speaks. When you stop resisting, he shines. When you cease seeking outwardly, he returns within. You may have once thought holiness was something distant, but nothing is closer. Because that sacredness does not demand your perfection. It only asks you to return to your true essence. No masks, no resistance, no self-deceit. When you dare to look into your own inner darkness without avoidance, the flame begins to glow. When you embrace your vulnerability with compassion instead of contempt, that light expands from your heart like a silent flood. The inner Christ does not come to save you from suffering. He comes to remind you that you have never been separated from the eternal light. In the most ambiguous moments of your life, when no advice helps, when no one understands you, when even you don't understand yourself, there is a voice, soft and small, rising from within. You are still loved. This is not a thought. It is a living truth whispering from your deepest place, and if you are still enough to listen, you will realize no one can take that light from you. They may hurt you, dim your hope, cause you to doubt, but they cannot remove what has belonged to your soul long before you had a name for it. The inner Christ is the source of your greatest strength because it is the place where you are no longer conditioned. You no longer need to prove your worth, chase external ideals, or fear your shortcomings. Because you understand that you did not come here to become someone by the world's definition. You came here to be yourself in your most purest form and to live from that energy without needing anyone's permission. And it is from that place that all miracles arise. No complex rituals needed, no begging prayers. Just place your hand on your heart, close your eyes, and ask, what does the life within me want right now? And you'll find doors once believed closed begin to open. Difficult decisions become clear. Wounds you thought would never heal begin to dissolve in silence. Because in every moment you connect with the inner Christ, you operate from the supreme power of love and presence. You don't need to wait until life settles to access that sacredness. In fact, it shows itself most clearly amid the broken pieces, when everything around you falls apart, when there's nothing left to hold on to. That's when you truly feel the unshakable foundation beneath all chaos. It is the foundation of belief that cannot be bought, of love that cannot be demanded, of presence that cannot be conditioned. And once you live from that place, the outside world simply mirrors back the wholeness you've remembered inside. Do not underestimate the quiet voice within you. It is not as loud as fear, not as fierce as anger, not as noisy as desire, but it is steady, unwavering, and always guiding you home. It teaches you to live in light, not slogans, to act from love, not from conquest, to keep your feet grounded, but your soul rising like a flame that never fades, because you were not born of chaos, you were born of light, and you will return to that light, not through religion, but through a life lived honestly, authentically, and fully present in every unfolding moment. When you know you carry Christ within, you no longer feel alone. When you live from that place, every relationship becomes sacred. When you speak from that place, your words carry healing energy. And when you act from that place, your life no longer chases achievement. It becomes the living embodiment of truth. No preaching needed, no proving necessary. You only need to be yourself in the light. The greatest danger is not what others think of you. It's the image you hold of yourself, buried deep within your subconscious. The place you don't speak of, don't dare to touch, but unconsciously replay every single day. You may smile, act strong, strive for success, but if deep down you still silently believe that you are wrong, not good enough, deserving of pain, then all those actions are merely masks, forced to compensate for a self quietly unraveling within. And so you find yourself repeating the same old cycles, loving the wrong person, choosing wrong, missing chances, punishing yourself, then starting again from the same point, because you are still living according to a false image of who you are. You were not born with a distorted self-image. Society gave it to you. Every scolding word, every disappointed glance, every experience of rejection, your nervous system recorded them not just intellectually, but emotionally. And those emotions slowly formed a psychological portrait, an image you came to believe as me. But the truth is, no one is born with shame. No one is born with a stained soul. There is only light covered in dust. And your task is not to start over. It is to realize you were never truly broken. You may have failed, but you are not a failure. You may have been betrayed, but you are not someone who deserves abandonment. You may have made mistakes, but you are not those mistakes. You are the witness, the soul in learning, the light that has forgotten how to see itself through the lens of love. And you have the right to begin again, not from a new circumstance, but from a new way of seeing yourself. The greatest shift doesn't come from apology or justification. It comes in that quiet moment when you sit with yourself and dare to ask, what image have I been believing is me that isn't really me? Remember, you cannot transcend what you still identify with. If you still see yourself as a victim, you will continue to live as one. If you still carry the old image of a child who is blamed, left behind, you'll continue to react like that child in all your present relationships. Only when you peel away each layer of false belief can you begin living from a new frequency, one that defines you not by your past, but by the light you choose to believe in today. Changing your self-picture is not self-delusion. It is a deep journey that requires honesty, perseverance, and compassion for yourself. It begins when you stop calling yourself by the hurtful names others once gave you. It begins when you refuse to keep living as a version defined by mistakes. Each morning, place your hand on your heart and call your name as if speaking to a sacred soul. I see you. I do not hate you. I will walk with you, not from shame, but from light. Healing does not happen in a single magical moment. It happens when you consistently choose anew, even if at first it feels awkward or untrue. But keep going. Every time you choose to see yourself with love instead of judgment, you are recharging the new image, and that new image doesn't need to be glamorous. It only needs to be true, true to the essence of your soul. You are light, remembering itself. When you rewrite your inner image, the outer world begins to reflect it back. People who once belittled you start to feel foreign. Situations that once hurt you no longer reach you. You no longer need to react, no need to prove anything. You just need to keep walking as someone who has seen the real light within the mirror of the soul. No longer the old image painted by the past, but a soul that is free, unbound by labels, unashamed to be fully present. That's when you understand every mistake was just dust, and the light beneath it has always been intact, never shattered. No one can take your worth unless you hand it over by believing you don't deserve it, but you can reclaim it. Right now, just sit down, look into your own eyes in the mirror, and say gently, sincerely, I had forgotten. But today, I remember who I am. You don't attract what you want through logic. You attract precisely what you believe to be true through energy. And that energy does not lie in the words you speak when trying to stay positive. It resides in the deeper layers of vibration where you've never said anything aloud, yet always feel certain things about yourself, about the world, and about your worth. That's why you can read hundreds of self-help books, write out endless goal lists, and still find your external life repeating the same cycles. Because you don't attract through hope. You attract through the core belief operating beneath your consciousness. If you believe that you must constantly earn love, you will unconsciously choose relationships where you're always proving your worth. If you believe you don't deserve abundance, you'll turn down the best opportunities with seemingly logical reasons. If you believe life is a battle, you'll always find yourself in a state of threat, needing to control and defend. Every thought you repeat doesn't just shape awareness. It forms a vibrational field, and that very field is what you live in every moment, whether you're aware of it or not. The law of attraction doesn't operate by surface level will. It operates through the deepest emotional frequency you carry, and it is especially sensitive to what you believe to be true. Believe the world is safe, and you'll open your heart. Believe that people are bound to betray you, and you'll create scenarios that make it happen again. Believe you are lovable, and you'll be met with respectful eyes. Believe you are a burden, and you'll be avoided. Every reaction from the world is a faithful reflection of the energy you're emitting. And most importantly, you cannot deceive the universe. You can only transform yourself from within to generate a new frequency. If you want to change what you attract, don't start with goals. Start with your core beliefs. Ask yourself, what beliefs are looping in my mind every day? They may sound like, I'm not good enough, I'm always left behind, I must overperform to be seen. I can't have love and success at the same time. These beliefs may have come from parents, childhood, or painful experiences, but you don't have to carry them forever. You have the right to restructure your belief system, not through forced effort, but with calm, consistent awareness. You choose to examine, question, and replace each old thought with a new truth you now choose to believe. Because when you shift your beliefs, you don't just change your thinking, you change your nervous system, your vibrational frequency, and your biological responses. Your body begins to open instead of shrink. Your voice naturally carries more vitality. The way you walk into a room no longer recoils in fear of judgment. And at that point, you no longer have to try to attract anyone. You become magnetic because you now believe you are worthy of being received. You don't need theology to understand the law of attraction. It is a natural principle, like gravity. You cannot stop attracting something. You can only consciously tune your vibration to attract what you choose, rather than letting the subconscious run the old programming. And this process starts in the smallest of things. How you speak to yourself each morning, how you respond to rejection, how you treat your body when you're tired. Every choice is a signal sent into the universe. And the universe does not judge good or bad. It simply reflects what you have confirmed is true in the energy of your daily living. The beautiful truth is, you don't have to be perfect to start attracting good things. You only need to be honest, to look directly at the beliefs pulling you down without judgment, to name the old fears, but not identify with them. Each time you dare to choose a new belief, that you are worthy, that you can be happy without sacrificing yourself, you shift your magnetic field. And once your frequency changes, every external piece begins to move with it, quietly, naturally. Everything arrives like a downstream current, because you're no longer living against the light within you. You don't need to become someone else to attract what you desire. You only need to return to your truest form, untouched by shame, unbound by limitation. When you live as if good things are coming, instead of fearing they'll be taken, you send a clear signal that you're ready. And that's when what once seemed miraculous begins to unfold, not because of luck, but because you've aligned your vibration with exactly what you're calling in. Everything you're experiencing on the outside is a faithful reflection of something happening within you. The people you meet, the recurring situations, even the setbacks or opportunities, they are not random, nor are they the result of blind fate. They are mirrors, projections of your inner world, displayed on the screen of reality. What prevents many from recognizing this truth is their constant focus on changing the external, while never turning inward to adjust the very thing that created the circumstances in the first place, their own root perceptions and emotions. You cannot control every event, but you can control the internal frequency you emit each day. And that frequency becomes the filter through which you view the world. If you live in doubt, you'll see hidden motives everywhere. If you're filled with shame, you'll interpret others' eyes as judgment. If you're wounded and unhealed, you'll interpret harmless actions as threats. When your inner world is in turmoil, the outside world, no matter how peaceful, becomes a battlefield. Conversely, when your inner world is steady, even in harsh conditions, you'll find ways to heal, recover, and move through it with clarity and resilience. The world is not against you, it only reflects you. And the key is, you don't need to try to control everyone and everything. You only need to adjust within yourself. A fearful mind will make poor choices. An unforgiving heart will build walls against opportunities. A self unloved will unconsciously sabotage what's good because it believes it doesn't deserve it. So instead of asking, why does this keep happening, pause and ask, what reflection within me is creating this? That's when you shift from being reactive to being proactive, from victim to creator. There is a profound paradox. The more you blame reality, the more you reinforce the energy that created it. Because every time you repeat anger, blame, or helplessness, you're fueling the very imprint you wish to erase. To change the mirror, don't shatter it. Shift your inner gaze. Begin nurturing new truths, new emotions, new responses. When you change how you see others, others will change how they respond to you. When you stop being defensive, life softens. When you stop fighting every experience and begin understanding them as messages, that's when the mirror begins to reflect a different reality. The world isn't a place to control. It's a stage upon which you come to realize who you are and have been. If you find yourself attracting people who hurt you, ask, do I believe I only deserve conditional love? If you're always being rejected, ask, what part of myself have I rejected first? If you keep being left behind, perhaps you're the one quietly withdrawing from your own life. These questions are not to assign blame. They're to return to you the power of self-transformation, where you no longer depend on the world, but begin reshaping it by reshaping yourself. When you face the fragments within with the light of awareness, they no longer control you. And the miracle is, you don't need to change everything in a day. You just need a starting point, one small shift in how you think, how you see, how you respond. And it's enough to alter the path of reflection. When you begin nurturing a new belief in your worth, you'll start seeing the world respond with respect. When you move with healthier emotions, you'll experience fewer dramas, less hurt. And when you live with genuine gratitude, life begins to clear the path for your next steps. No one else can reflect a truth you do not believe. If you've chosen light within, the outer darkness cannot take root. If you believe you are worthy of unconditional love, the conditions will naturally fall away. If you believe you are light remembering itself, then everything around you will gradually adjust to match that essence, not through force, but through the natural resonance of vibration. Remember, the world never betrays you. It only reflects what you're sending out, and you can begin adjusting it from this very moment. No need to wait for tomorrow, no need for someone to apologize, no need for the situation to change first. You only need to have the courage to turn inward and renew yourself first. Words are not merely a means of communication. Every word you speak carries the energy that shapes your reality. You're not just narrating your life, you are programming it day by day, hour by hour, through the way you speak about yourself, about the world, about others. Every complaint, every moment you diminish your own worth, every time you say, I can't, or I'm exhausted, it's not just an expression of emotion. It is a command issued to your subconscious, a message your nervous system receives and responds to accordingly. And what you repeat through speech becomes an invisible definition of who you are, whether you are aware of it or not. Someone who says, I'll never get better, is not just expressing disappointment. They are attaching a new limitation to themselves. Every time you say, I always have bad luck, you're not simply recounting the past. You're activating a future that mirrors the same pattern. Words, when combined with emotion, carry a vibration powerful enough to influence not only the mind, but also your biology, your behavior, and your field of attraction. You could eat healthily, exercise daily, meditate for hours, but if you still call yourself stupid, a failure, unlucky, then you are sabotaging that entire system of recovery with the very language you use. On the other hand, when you learn to speak about yourself with integrity, respect, and positive vision, you begin healing through your own voice. You don't need to shout. You don't need to memorize dozens of affirmations if your heart doesn't believe them. You only need to pause before speaking something negative and choose differently. Instead of saying, I'm so bad at this, say, I'm learning. Instead of, I'm so tired, try, I need to recharge, and I give myself permission to do that. You don't need to lie to yourself. You just need to stop casting spells you once mistook for casual speech, because the subconscious doesn't distinguish between real or joke. It doesn't recognize when you're just saying. Every time you speak something with an accompanying emotional state, the brain records it as fact. And from there, your body adjusts its hormones, your energy shifts frequency, and your behavior begins to align with the belief that was just reinforced through your words. And here's the danger. The more unconsciously you repeat a statement, the more deeply it embeds itself into your psychological framework as a default command. No one needs to curse you if you already unconsciously cursing yourself each day through seemingly harmless phrases like, I don't have time, nothing ever works out for me, I can't change. Words are not a game. They are tools of creation or destruction. And you're using them all your life. You are directing your voice at your reality like a double-edged sword, either paving the way or severing your own opportunities. Look at the people you admire. Not all of them are extraordinarily talented, but they speak what they believe. They name what they choose. They affirm their value daily through words of power. They don't use language to avoid life. They use language as a tool to clarify the path they intend to take. If you truly want to change your life, don't just change your actions. Start with your words. Change the way you speak about yourself. I'm improving every day. I'm choosing again. I allow myself to learn and grow. I am someone remembering my true inner strength. These aren't magic spells, but if you repeat them often enough with conscious awareness, you will see yourself change. You'll stand taller. You'll communicate differently. You'll make better aligned choices, because words don't just transmit. They reprogram the speaker. And once you understand that words are commands, you'll become as careful as an alchemist wielding power. You'll no longer casually criticize yourself. You'll stop joining in on toxic jokes. You won't say, I probably can't do it. Because you'll know that every time you do, you're closing another door. And from that awareness, you'll form the habit of staying silent instead of tearing yourself down, speaking only what you wish to see, and using your words as tools for healing, connection, and support for both yourself and others. The world may not yet believe in you, but if you yourself don't dare to affirm your own being, who will do it for you? Every word you speak is a command to your subconscious, to your nervous system, and to the universe itself. And that power, you've always had it. The only question is, how long have you forgotten it? Speech was once the most sacred power that humans possessed. In ancient civilizations, words were not merely a tool for communication. They were a means of invocation, a gateway to connect with higher vibrational realms. Every sound, every breath woven into words carried a frequency. And if spoken from a place of purity in consciousness, it could heal, illuminate, or guide. But over time, words lost their sacredness. They were used for defense, for manipulation, to conceal pain, or simply to fill the void of disconnection. And when you repeat hollow words long enough, the energy within your speech also fades, becoming dull, aimless, and disconnected. Restoring the sacred energy in your words does not begin with saying many positive things, but with reconnecting to the source energy within each word you speak. It means speaking only when your mind is clear, speaking only when your heart is present, and listening to your own voice as if it is shaping the world, not merely describing it. Because the truth is this: your words do not merely recount the past, they are calling in the future. A sentence spoken with high awareness will uplift the energy of a space. A sentence spoken from genuine love will move the listener into silence and feeling. And a sentence born from inner balance will touch the deepest parts of another without needing explanation. You don't need to be a sage to awaken this power. You only need to pause before speaking and ask, will this word I'm about to speak raise energy? Does it carry truth, love, and clarity? If not, you have the right to remain silent, not out of fear, but because you are guarding your own energy field. When you practice this often enough, you'll realize words don't just change others, they change you. You begin to hear the sounds within yourself more clearly. You recognize the noise of old reaction patterns, and you learn to use words as you would use light, in the right moment, in the right place, and at the right frequency. Someone who holds sacred energy in their speech does not speak unnecessarily. They don't flatter, don't argue, don't try to prove anything through noise. They can remain silent in a crowd, but when they speak, the room quiets down. Not because they raise their voice, but because the energy behind their words carries weight. They don't need to win with arguments because they have already won within themselves. And the remarkable thing is, such a person doesn't need to say much, but every word they utter is heard. Because that word doesn't just pass through the ear, it goes into the heart. It's not just correct, it's true. To restore sacred energy to speech, you must purify the source from which your words emerge. No high frequency can be expressed from a heart filled with unresolved pain. If your inner space is full of repressed anger, no matter how beautiful your words, they will carry a sharp undertone. If you still doubt yourself, your voice will never carry true inspiration. That's why you must return inward and begin to heal, layer by layer. Observe how you speak about others, for that's also how you speak to yourself. Observe what you say when you're tired. That is your real inner voice that you've never admitted. And from there, practice speaking with consciousness, not just out of reflex. Some words are like prayers. Though simple, when spoken with full presence and sincerity, they create a healing resonance. A genuine thank you can shift the energy of an entire day. A heartfelt apology can dismantle the emotional armor that years of explanations never could. A brief but sincere blessing can become a lifeline for someone on the brink of despair. And if you understand this, you will never again underestimate the power of your own words. Not even a few. True strength does not lie in what you say when you're happy, but in your ability to hold light in your words when you are wounded, tired, or disillusioned. That is when your speech becomes a form of meditation, a form of prayer, a sacred act that you yourself may not even realize is creating miracles. You speak to stay awake. You speak to stand firm in truth. And you speak so you do not betray the light within you that longs to live. Don't let your speech become a tool for your wounds. Let it be a channel of light. Each morning when you wake, choose again. What will I speak today from a place of love? What will I repeat so the universe hears it? What seeds will I sow through the words I release? And if you truly live with these questions each day, you'll find that it's not just your voice that changes, but the entire course of your life begins to shift accordingly. Every time you utter a prayer and feel distant, every time you look up to the sky with tearful eyes and believe that there's a divine being watching you from above, that is a moment when you unconsciously draw a boundary between yourself and the most sacred. But the truth is, there is no distance between you and God. There is no lofty sky that divides. There is no separation, no gap. There is only one thing: forgetfulness. It's only one thing, forgetfulness. You don't need to search for God. You only need to remember that you are an inseparable part of that source of light from the very beginning. The feeling of separation is a product of the dualistic mind. It creates the illusion of subject and object, of the self and the outside world, of the one who prays and the one being prayed to. But in absolute stillness, where form and name dissolve, all that remains is a pure presence, like the ocean and the drop. There is no need to prove that the drop belongs to the sea, because its nature has always been so. You are a drop of light from the sacred ocean. You have never left it. You've simply lived so long in the realm of forgetfulness that you've mistaken yourself as lost. From the moment you realize this, your inner world begins to shift. The sense of lack starts to dissolve. The urge to prove, to seek, to reach something outside begins to lose meaning. Why? Because you realize everything you were looking for has always existed within you and has never left. You don't need to climb high mountains, perform rituals, or receive blessings from others to become worthy. You are already enough because you are a living expression of God. And from that awareness, you no longer beg as someone weak. You choose to live as a beam of light, remembering its purpose. From this union, love is no longer a need to fill a void. It becomes the natural flow of a soul that no longer fears. You love because you are love. You don't wait for validation to exist. You don't give to receive something in return. You simply become the current of sacred energy, like the sun that shines without reason, like the flower that blooms without needing praise. And from that place, you are free. You are no longer dependent on judgment, no longer ruled by outcome, no longer bargaining your soul with the world. Union with God doesn't dissolve the ego. It allows the ego to merge into something larger, more complete, more peaceful. And when you act from that place, where separation no longer exists, you begin to create with profound impact. Why? Because your words are no longer distorted by fear. Your actions no longer arise from deficiency. Every choice becomes part of a harmonious dance between you and the whole. And that is what causes your life to begin moving to a different rhythm, lighter, clearer, and more precise. You may call the source God, the universe, the creator, the light. The name doesn't matter. What matters is whether you still see yourself as a separate being or whether you have remembered the oneness. When you say, I'm only human, you're shrinking your divine nature into a temporary shell. But when you slow your breath, look into someone's eyes with compassion and say without words, I recognize that you are me. In that very moment, you and God are no longer two. There is no prayer more powerful than living as if what you've prayed for has already been granted. No ritual more sacred than showing up fully present for yourself and others. And no miracle greater than letting go of the illusion of separation to return to the pure state of union where you don't need to become anything because you already are everything. When your soul remembers this, you no longer seek the light. You become the light. And when you live as the light, every corner of your life, from your words, actions, to your silence, carries a deeper meaning. You no longer fear being misunderstood, no longer need approval because you have merged with the most sacred presence that no words could ever describe. Every time you hold on to a wound, a hurt that hasn't been resolved, you are locking a part of your vital energy in the prison of the past. It doesn't just reside in memory, it lives in every cell, every breath, every unconscious reaction. You might say, I'm fine, but your body still tenses when hearing that person's name. You might laugh among the crowd, yet one careless comment can shatter your trust completely. This reveals that you haven't truly forgiven. And your energy remains imprisoned, not by others, but by your own attachment to what has passed. Forgiveness is not an act of absolving the one who caused pain. Forgiveness is an act of liberating yourself from the energy of bondage. You don't do it to forget, and certainly not to deny what happened. You forgive because you understand. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Every negative thought you keep silently drains your life force, muddies your inspiration, and makes it impossible to create anything pure from within. And eventually, you don't even remember what you're angry about. You just feel exhausted, doubtful, and closed off to the world. Some people continue to live ordinary lives, but their energy feels like it's covered by a thin layer of gray dust, not because of circumstances, but because of unresolved resentment. It distorts the way they see the world. They mistrust kindness, envy the happiness of others, overreact to minor things because their minds have grown accustomed to defense. But when you choose to forgive, you are giving yourself the chance to renew your mind. You're not forcing yourself to just get over it, but telling your inner self, I will no longer let the past determine the quality of my energy today. Forgiveness is a decision, and sometimes it needs to be made repeatedly. There will be moments when you think it's done, then a memory resurfaces reminding you there's still a part of you that hasn't been embraced. Don't rush it. Forgiveness isn't an event. It's a deep cleansing process, layer by layer. Maybe today you only have the strength to forgive 10%, then tomorrow 15%, then 40%, and one day you'll reach a point where the memory remains, but the energy has shifted. You no longer feel pain when remembering. You no longer desire revenge. You simply feel light. At that moment, you understand, forgiveness doesn't change the past. It frees the future. How many opportunities in your life have been blocked simply because your heart remained closed to someone from the past? How many new relationships couldn't flourish because you hadn't let go of old stories? How much creative energy, intuition, and inspiration has been buried because some corner of your heart was still unforgiven? When you forgive, you reclaim all the fragments of energy that were once lost. And in that moment, you don't just heal, you return to your wholeness. Don't think forgiveness means approval. You're not denying the wrongdoing. You're simply choosing not to let it control your energy for another second. You don't forgive because the other person deserves it. You forgive because you deserve to live free from the shackles of negative emotions. And you don't have to wait until your heart feels ready. Readiness often comes after the decision, not before it. Begin by naming the real emotion. Write it down if needed. Whisper to yourself, I'm still angry, hurt, disappointed, but I choose not to let this feeling define me forever. Then imagine opening a door in your heart, allowing the imprisoned memories to step into the light. Don't force it. As long as you are present, honest, and breathing through each layer of emotion, you've already begun a release deeper than any technique can offer. When true forgiveness happens, you will feel an unnamed lightness. You no longer battle internally. You no longer pretend. You no longer react the same way. You become still, but not numb, loving, but not dependent. And you begin to see yourself again, no longer the victim, no longer the one who resists, but a soul who has chosen to transcend. There is a kind of shackle that makes no sound, requires no lock, and yet binds our soul tighter each day. It is the shackle of guilt and shame. This energy doesn't reveal itself in words, but hides in the way you avoid your own gaze in the mirror, in the harshness with which you treat yourself, in that persistent background music whispering, I'm not good enough, that silently controls every behavior. And if left unbroken, it will cause you to shrink, not because you lack worth, but because you stop believing you deserve to be free from your past. You can forgive the entire world, but if you don't forgive yourself, you will always remain on the sidelines of your own life. Why? Because somewhere deep in your subconscious, you still believe you have to pay a little more. You reject joy, avoid love, fear that happiness will come only to leave. Not because the world is too harsh, but because you haven't dared to embrace yourself while still imperfect. But does anyone truly have to be perfect to deserve forgiveness? If God waited for you to be perfect before offering light, then that light would no longer be unconditional. True forgiveness begins when you stop demanding that you be different in order to be loved. Guilt is a feeling that needs to be heard but not nurtured. It is a signal to help adjust your actions, not a weapon to punish your spirit. Yet many of us turn that feeling into an unspoken identity. We fuse ourselves with our mistakes and live as if we are those mistakes. But look deeper. Isn't the part of you that made the mistake also the part that was young, unknowing, still learning? Then why use today's wiser eyes to punish the version of you who didn't know better yesterday? You cannot grow if you keep beating your soul every time an old mistake surfaces. Self-forgiveness is an act of noble intelligence and compassion. It's not an excuse, but an understanding. Every soul is passing through layers of learning, and every stumble is an essential part of the path of evolution. When you forgive yourself, you're telling your inner being, I see the wound, I acknowledge the harm caused, and I choose to live differently. Not to redeem myself, but to become a version more worthy of the light within me. And that is the most profound transformation, from shame to freedom, from punishment to healing. Don't wait for someone to confirm you're worthy of self-forgiveness. There will be people who never forgive you. There will be memories that never fully disappear. But you don't need to erase them. You just need to transform your emotional connection to those memories. What happened doesn't need to vanish. It only needs to be seen with new eyes. Imagine your younger self, confused, afraid, unloved, unintentionally hurting someone or yourself. Now that you are more mature, return to that younger part and embrace it with unconditional compassion, just as you once wished someone had done when you first knew pain. Self-forgiveness does not happen in a single moment. It is a process of undoing knots, through understanding, through empathy, through giving yourself permission to err and learn. Every time you dare to say to yourself, I was wrong, and I still deserve to be loved, you release another piece of the energy once held captive. And as you gradually reclaim that wholeness, you begin to live from a brighter place, where you no longer need to hide, no longer wear a mask of righteousness, no longer fear being seen for your soul's scars, because you know true light does not avoid the dark, it embraces it to transform it. Self-forgiveness is the first step to trusting yourself again. When you stop being hard on yourself, your intuition becomes clearer. When you cease judging yourself, your creative energy starts to flow again. And when you live untethered from past mistakes, those around you begin to treat you with a new kind of respect, because your energy no longer carries the scent of shame, but the fragrance of awareness. You don't need anyone to validate that you're worthy of forgiveness. The permission must come from within. Let the light you once sought outside turn inward to illuminate the deepest part of your heart. There, a younger version of you is still waiting to be forgiven, not to be released, but to be welcomed back as an integral part of your soul. There comes a moment when every effort to explain, to persuade, to beg, or to justify becomes unnecessary. It is the moment when you feel as if there is nothing left to say. You've spoken to others, to yourself, to the past, and even to the future, and all you're left with is exhaustion. But precisely in that moment, when you choose silence, not out of despair, but out of deep understanding, the sacred begins to reveal itself. The deepest truth is never spoken through sound, it speaks through presence. Silence is not an escape from communication. It is a higher form of language where all coarseness is cleansed, where the ego ceases and the soul begins to breathe. In silence, you no longer try to control the narrative, no longer strain to prove anything, no longer react out of habit. You are left with one thing only, the living truth flowing within you. And that is where God speaks, not through voice, but through intuition, through feeling, through a gentle yet undeniable beam of light. God does not intrude upon the noisy crowd of the mind. He does not shout to drown out doubt, worry, or calculation. He waits for you to step out of the distortion, to enter the space where the whispers of self-judgment fade, where all labels of right and wrong, better and worse, gain and loss, dissolve. He is present in the moment. You stop thinking of yourself as a separate ego and begin to feel yourself as part of something much greater. That silence is not empty. It is full of the energy of truth, like a still lake, deep and evocative. When you stop speaking, you begin to listen, not to the world out there, but to the world within. You begin to hear the pain that was never named, the fears buried beneath the appearance of strength, the desires you thought were long forgotten, but you also begin to hear the peace that never left, the faith that never died, the light that has quietly waited for you to look again. And in that stillness, answers no longer need to be sought. They come on their own, piece by piece, as if someone were redrawing the map, but this time from within. Silence does not weaken you. It makes you deeper, clearer, and more dangerous to the forces that once controlled you through fear. The one who knows when to be silent is the one who knows how to conserve energy for what truly matters. They don't rush to argue, don't need to win debates, don't need the last word. They understand. Truth does not need to be shouted because it is solid enough to echo in silence. When you stop speaking, you begin to see how hollow the words of others truly are. You notice how many sentences are just masks for insecurity. How many arguments are just ways of avoiding the self? And more importantly, when you stop speaking, you no longer try to convince God to act, but you begin to understand that He is already acting through you. Every question begins to fall away. Every why turns into why not. Every what more do I need becomes this is enough. And in that silence, a new form of prayer begins, not one of words, not one of ritual, but one born from an open mind and a heart ready to let go. This world is not lacking in speech. What it lacks are people deep enough to remain silent and still touch one another's soul. You don't need to raise your voice to be understood. You only need to be present, with eyes that do not judge, with peace radiating from within. And that will speak louder than any sermon ever could. Those who have lost their way will feel something when they're near you, not because you speak eloquently, but because you have touched something they too long to touch within themselves. Sacred connection. Give yourself quiet moments each day, not to run from the world, but to return to the source and recharge with truth. That is the place where you don't need to become anything else. You don't need to fix. You don't need to erase. You only need to be present. And in that very presence, the false layers will naturally fall away. The invisible chains will quietly break open, and the silence will clear the way for God to speak through you. There are moments in life that seem to shatter you. Loss, betrayal, failure, even enduring pain that seems endless. And when they arrive, you call them tragedies, disasters, injustices. But there is a truth that only those who have walked barefoot through the darkness with their eyes open can truly see. Everything that happens in your life is allowed to happen by a greater wisdom, for a greater purpose. No event in life is meaningless. No wound is redundant. Not a single moment is handed to you to blindly inflict harm. All are part of the law of goodness, a sacred principle that transcends all dualistic judgment. This law does not say, this is good or that is bad. It only says, all of it serves the awakening of your soul. Look back at the times you writhed in pain. You are no longer the same person. The pain did not destroy you. It illuminated you. It forced you to let go of what was false, to confront what was real, and to strip away the masks you once mistook for your skin. Perhaps at the time, you didn't understand why you had to endure it. But now, you know. That very experience opened a door you never dared to knock on. The law of goodness does not justify suffering. It transforms how you perceive it. It doesn't turn tragedy into comfort, but it teaches you to find deeper meaning beneath every loss. A friend's betrayal is not an enemy. It is a catalyst, prompting you to learn self-respect. A bankruptcy is not a failure. It is a wake-up call to live true to your core values. An illness is not a punishment. It is an invitation to return to yourself, to tend to both body and soul. We live in a world obsessed with control. We want everything to be smooth, according to plan, just right. And when life veers off script, we resist, we blame, we collapse. But that control is an illusion. Your soul does not need a flawless life. It needs an honest journey to become the fullest version of itself. And that only happens when you dare to view every twist and turn through the lens of a student, not a victim. The law of goodness is the foundation of all inner evolution. It teaches you to transform every situation into a quantum leap by shifting your attitude instead of your circumstances. No more, why me, but what is this here to teach me? No more, how do I escape, but how do I open? No more, I am hurt, but I am healing through this experience. And then you begin to see life through different eyes. Those who once hurt you are no longer villains. They are unawakened souls who, unknowingly, became mirrors reflecting you back to yourself. Failures are no longer stains. They are proof that you dared, that you lived. Losses are no longer endings. They are spaces cleared so that something more beautiful can enter. Everything becomes a vehicle, bringing you closer to your truest self. The law of goodness does not demand that you be cheerful in the face of suffering. It only asks that you do not close your heart, even when everything outside seems to be collapsing. Because only when your heart remains open, life force continues to flow. And when life force flows, you are still being guided, even through the most painful paths. You don't have to believe in God as a religion, but you must believe in the intelligence of the universe where nothing happens outside the blueprint of your soul's evolution. A falling leaf is not an accident. A fleeting encounter is not random, and a crisis does not come to end you. It comes to unveil a different version of you, deeper, brighter, truer. If you are in a dark season right now, don't rush to conclude that your life has gone astray. Sit down, breathe slowly, and ask yourself, is there something I haven't learned, haven't let go of, haven't yet seen? The answer won't come like thunder. It will come like a breeze, just enough to let you know you are no longer alone. And when you begin to see light, even within the darkness, you will understand there is no such thing as misfortune, only opportunities that haven't yet been called by their true name. There is a kind of energy that requires no exchange, no conditions, no perfection, no reward. It's the kind of energy you once felt when someone accepted you even while you were messy, unfinished, not yet enough. That is unconditional love. Not a moral concept or a hollow teaching, but the most powerful healing frequency in the entire system of universal life. What we humans often call love is, more often than not, wrapped in expectations. I love you because you love me. I love you if you don't leave me. I love you as long as you don't change. And when one of those conditions is broken, that love fractures, collapses, and turns into pain or resentment. That is not love. That is an emotional contract, a transaction masked with beautiful words. True love does not come from control. It comes from freedom. Unconditional love does not love you because you are right. It loves you because you are you. No need to strive, no need to prove. No need to erase the darkness to be accepted. In fact, because of that darkness, it loves you even deeper. For true love sees the pain you haven't voiced, the scars you've hidden, the parts of you no one's ever touched, and still chooses to embrace the whole of you without fixing, without forcing change, and simply present and embracing. In all deep spiritual traditions, love is not an emotion. It is a vibrational state, a way life moves and regenerates. When a newborn is placed on their mother's chest, the only thing happening is not communication, but energetic transfer. The mother's heart, without speaking, emits a vibration of absolute protection. And it is that vibration that keeps the child alive, stabilizes their heartbeat, regulates their breath, and gives them safety. That is the raw, primal, and powerful healing force of unconditional love. And this very source of energy is waiting for you to offer it to yourself, because you cannot heal by demanding love from others. You only begin to recover when you are the first to open your arms to embrace your own imperfect self. No blame, no shame, just a quiet gaze that says, I did the best I could with what I had at the time. Unconditional love does not love you because your past is clean or because you have the potential to shine in the future. It loves you in this very moment, even if you are still flawed, still afraid, still torn. And for that reason, such love does not imprison, does not cling, does not impose ideal images. It liberates. It heals by not interfering. It covers wounds without dissecting them. It creates space for you to recover instead of forcing you to become someone. When you begin to love without conditions, your relationships shift. You no longer expect others to return your love in the exact way you gave it. You no longer tally emotional fairness. You simply give, because giving becomes an expansion of yourself, not a strategy to receive. And strangely, in that moment, you receive even more, not from the places you expected, but from channels you never imagined. Unconditional love is not weakness or indulgence. It is the strongest energy, because it is independent. The one who can love without needing to possess is the strongest, because they no longer use love as a crutch for lack. They are a source, not a seeker, and the world cannot resist such people, for they do not need to win, be understood, or gain approval. They simply need to live in the vibration their soul has already touched. And maybe you have loved this way, if only once. Maybe you forgave someone without needing an apology. Maybe you quietly wished well for someone who left. Maybe you kept your distance so that someone you loved could be free. If you've ever done that, you've touched unconditional love, and you've already begun to heal yourself through the highest frequency in the universe. Nothing penetrates the defenses of a wounded soul faster than the gentle yet unwavering light of unconditional love. Nothing breaks ancestral cycles of suffering faster than pure forgiveness. And nothing returns you to your true nature more quickly than admitting, I deserve to be loved. Not for any reason, but because I am alive, I am feeling, I am present, here and now. Prayer is not a religious ritual. It is an ancient technology, the language of consciousness, the vibration of the soul connecting to the highest frequency of the universe. When you understand this, you no longer pray as a beggar. You begin to pray as a co-creator. And the moment you change the way you pray, you change your reality. Most of us grew up with the image of prayer as bowing our heads, expressing our desires, and waiting for some higher force to grant us what we need. That approach casts you as small, lacking, dependent. But what few tell you is this: you do not need approval for a miracle to happen. You only need to align with it in thought, emotion, and belief. When you say, please heal me, but deep down still believe you are sick, you are not praying. You are reinforcing the separation between you and what you long for. But when you say, I am healed, and every cell in your being vibrates with that truth, that is true prayer. It is not the words that make the prayer. It is the inner state from which you speak them. Modern science is beginning to catch up with this ancient truth. Many neurological studies show that when a person enters a state of positive prayer, not pleading or complaining, but deeply connecting with gratitude, love, stillness. Their brainwaves shift from stress beta to calming alpha and deep theta. Oxytocin is released, cortisol drops, the immune system regenerates, and most importantly, the brain cannot tell the difference between something vividly imagined and something physically real. Meaning, when you pray from a state of union instead of lack, you are reprogramming both mind and body to believe it is already real, and the universe, which responds only to vibration, will reflect it. That is why the most effective prayers are rarely long. It's not about what you say. It's about who you are while you say it. Someone trembling while begging for peace will only feel more unrest. But someone who sits quietly, breathes deeply, places a hand on their heart and whispers, "I am at peace," that person is activating the original code of harmony within. So what is true prayer? It is the act of someone who believes what they're praying for is already real, even if not yet seen. It is entering the frequency of your desire. If you pray for love, then radiate as one already in love, gentle, grateful, open. If you pray for healing, treat your body as if it is healing, gently, with hope. You don't wait for a miracle to arrive. You are the miracle unfolding from within. And do not think that prayer only happens in silence in sacred spaces. Every conscious action, every thought aimed toward beauty, every act of forgiveness is prayer. When you walk and feel grateful for each step, when you place your hand on someone's heart and silently whisper, "Everything will be okay." When you choose silence over reaction, that is prayer, because you are aligning with a truth deeper than words, that you and life are not separate. Prayer does not change God. Prayer changes you. It decodes energy layers you once locked with fear. It opens doors of awareness logic cannot touch. It makes the impossible feel natural, not because someone bestowed grace, but because you finally return to the frequency where all things already exist. You don't need to memorize mantras. You only need to relearn how to listen, not to demand, but to harmonize with truth, not to explain clearly, but to reach the point where words become unnecessary. That is when you stop praying to receive and instead pray to unite with what is already here. So the next time you feel the urge to pray, don't rush to speak. Breathe. Adjust your posture. Place a hand on your heart. Remember who you are, not a beggar pleading for miracles, but a field of living energy seeking resonance with truth. And then, don't ask for anything. Declare it with your vibration. I am present in this truth. Because that presence, that unwavering belief, is the source code that unlocks healing and leads you to miracles. No permission required. You don't need to wait for a miracle. You are the miracle that has been forgotten. It's not out there. It's not hidden in some distant doctrine, nor held by a God far away. Everything you've been seeking, healing, awakening, wholeness, has always lived within you, like a sacred seed buried beneath the dust of time, wounds, and false beliefs. What's missing isn't the light. It's your willingness to let that light awaken from within. Revelation is not destruction. It is the unveiling of truth. In every ancient philosophy, from east to west, there is mention of a moment when humanity stops searching outside and begins returning inward to look at itself with the eyes of awakening. That is when masks fall, illusions dissolve, and old assumptions lose their power. Not because someone destroys the world, but because you finally see the world is only a mirror of you. When you live from your purest self, no longer identifying with fear, past, or pain, your energy shifts instantly. You no longer act from lack, but every action becomes an expression of inner power. You no longer love to avoid loneliness, but because love overflows in you. You no longer seek others to affirm your worth, because you have become the very light you were searching for. This transformation is not loud. There are no trumpets. It happens in silence, in a quiet morning when you wake up and decide you're done being a victim, in a single moment when you choose forgiveness, not to free the other person, but to free your soul from the weight of resentment. In one breath, you pause, look into the mirror, and whisper, "I'm still here, still whole, still worthy." When you realize you are the miracle, the world changes before your eyes. You no longer see randomness, only revelation. You no longer see obstacles, only lessons. You no longer see people who hurt you. You see souls still unhealed. And because of that, you become unshakable. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer fear losing what was never real, because you've rediscovered the only thing that is real, yourself. Awakening doesn't make you a superhero. It makes you human in the truest sense, undistorted, uncompromising, and inseparable from the sacred. You begin to walk with a quiet solidity, not because you know every answer, but because you trust that every question already holds its response, waiting to be heard in stillness. Your choices no longer come from reaction, but from presence. And that is the deepest liberation of all. To live unbound by your past, unchained by the future, untouched by the chaos around you. Maybe you've waited a long time for a miracle, but the greatest miracle is not something you get. It is the person you become along the way. Every pain has carved compassion into you. Every fall has expanded your wisdom. Every inner conflict has pointed you back to truth. No step was wasted, no soul meaningless. All of it brought you here, to the moment your soul remembers who you really are. So don't wait any longer. Don't delay, living in alignment with your truth. Let each breath be a rebirth. Let each moment be a quiet declaration, I am here, and I am enough. A miracle is not something that appears when you finally get it right. It's something that's always been waiting for you to believe enough to see. No one else can live for you. No one else can set you free, because you are the answer, the portal, the embodiment of light. You were once the seeker. Now you are what was being sought. You were once a dormant seed. Now you are the blooming flower. There are no more gates to pass through, no more lessons to complete, nothing to prove. Only one thing remains, to live fully as the light you already are. And when you do that, not in theory but in action, the entire universe begins to align, to clear the way and to welcome back a soul that had once forgotten itself. You are the miracle. And the time to rise is now.